Good evening, everybody. As promised, this is the second part of the story from last week. So, it would be great if you check the first part out before you listen to this one. I think it turned out great. And if you like the story, or want to support me, please leave a like or comment. It really helps me immensely to make those videos. Anyway, stay tuned for the final episode next week. And have a good night. I do not know how long I stood there, beneath the weight of the unseen gaze. Time had lost its grip on me, slipping through my fingers like sand. Yet, the sensation of being watched never faded. The countless eyes remained in the mist, blinking in eerie unison, their dim glow pulsating like dying embers. I felt no hunger, no thirst, yet an emptiness gnawed at me, something deeper, more profound than bodily needs. It was as though the very essence of my being was slowly unraveling, thinning like threadbare cloth, fraying at the edges. And still, I did not move. But hell, it seemed, was patient. A shift in the air, subtle but undeniable, beckoned me forward. The path stretched ahead, winding through a landscape both alien and familiar. The rock beneath my feet, though solid now, bore strange swirling patterns, as if molten stone had once flowed here, frozen in time. The surface was marred by deep fissures, some no wider than a hairline, others great jagged wounds in the earth, too deep to even see their end. Above, the sky, or what passed for it, remained a sickly expanse. A color that refused to be named, shifting between bruised purple and the deep, suffocating red of dying coals. No stars, no sun, no moon. Only the glow of unseen fires, reflecting off a ceiling of distant clouds, curling like smoke from some unknown source. I walked. The silence here was deceptive, a hushed breath before a scream. It was not true silence. If I listened carefully, just beyond the edge of hearing, there was a murmur, like voices, though too faint to decipher. They did not come from any one place, but seemed to rise from the very stone, echoing up through the cracks like whispers of the damned. Eventually, the path narrowed and began to descend, sloping gently downward. The mist thickened, clinging to my skin like damp wool, muffling even the sound of my own footfalls. And then, as I took another step, I saw them. The souls. They were unlike the ones I had seen before, the twisted wretches caught in eternal torment. No. Those were different. They lined the sides of the path, standing or kneeling in the fog, silent and unmoving. Cloaked figures, their forms draped in flowing tattered robes, as if time had worn them thin. Their faces were obscured by deep hoods, revealing nothing but shadow where features should have been. Some carried staffs, others held chains draped over their arms. Yet none made a sound. They were watching me. Though I could not see their eyes, I felt their gaze, heavy and cold, pressing into my very soul. A silent council, waiting, observing. I dared not to speak to them. Instead, I continued walking, my movements slow and deliberate. The path widened once more, leading me toward an archway carved into the very rock itself. It was massive, its surface adorned with inscriptions I could not read, ancient, curling letters, their meanings long lost to time. Some were sharp and angular, others fluid and winding like the flow of water. As I stepped beneath it, a breath of air passed through, though no wind stirred. It carried a scent, something acrid and bitter, tinged with the metallic tang of rust or blood. Beyond the arch, the land opened into a vast expanse. I stood upon the edge of a precipice, overlooking a valley unlike any I had ever seen. The ground sloped downward in terraces, each layer revealing something more grotesque than the last. Rivers of blackened sludge cut through the stone, their surfaces slick with something that shimmered like oil. The walls of the valley bore the scars of countless hands, claw marks dug deep into the rock, as though thousands had tried to escape but found no purchase. And the sky, no longer the deep bruised red, but something worse. It churned above, a swirling mass of darkness, shifting in slow, deliberate patterns, as though something immense stirred just beyond sight. It was not merely a sky, it was a ceiling, and beyond it, something was moving. A low, distant sound reverberated through the valley, a deep, resonant hum, as if the very bones of this place were groaning beneath the weight of eternity. I could not turn back, and so I descended. Each step carried me further into the unknown, the voices in the stone growing louder, though still unintelligible. The air grew thick, pressing against my skin, wrapping around me like invisible hands. Ahead, figures moved, shapes shifting in the haze, neither fully seen nor entirely obscured. They were not like the cloaked watchers. These souls crawled, their bodies half-formed, as if they had been sculpted from clay but left unfinished, their limbs stretching and folding in ways that defied reason. I did not know if they saw me, if they knew I was there. I only knew that I was walking deeper, deeper into a place where the very stone remembered suffering. And I could not escape the feeling that something else was waiting for me. I walked for what felt like days, or Perhaps only minutes. It was impossible to tell. Time in this place had no meaning, no anchor. The concept of before and after unraveled the further I ventured, until all that remained was now. The act of walking, the act of witnessing. Hell was endless. The ground beneath my feet changed as I walked. The cracked stone of the previous circle gave way to something softer, something that did not echo when I stepped. It was damp, spongy, as if the land itself was breathing. I tried not to think about what it was made of. The air, thick and oppressive, tasted of rust and something more putrid, something rotten, a stench that seeped into my lungs and coated the back of my throat. It was not the decay of flesh, not exactly, but something deeper, the decay of being. And then the mist shifted. At first, I thought it was a trick of my own exhaustion, the weight of this place forcing my mind into hallucination. But no. The haze ahead of me was stirring, curling around something massive. Shapes. They emerged slowly, as though rising from beneath a still lake. Faint at first, mere silhouettes in the suffocating gloom. But as they moved, their forms solidified, and I realized I was no longer alone. A procession. It stretched endlessly in both directions, winding through the mist in a slow, deliberate march. They were human, or they had been once. Thin, skeletal figures, draped in tattered robes of ashen gray. Their flesh hung from their bones in translucent sheets, stretched thin over hollow eye sockets and exposed ribs. Some were hunched, their backs burdened by wooden jokes that dug deep into their shoulders. Others dragged chains behind them, the rusted links carving deep furrows in the damp earth. They did not speak. Their faces were slack expressions, frozen in a kind of vacant eternal grief. Their feet, bare and torn, shuffled forward in perfect unison, as though they had long since lost the ability to do anything else. I stood motionless, watching, waiting for one of them to look at me, to acknowledge me. But they did not waver. Their march continued, oblivious to my presence, an unbroken line of suffering, stretching beyond the horizon. Then I saw the ones at the center. They were different. Where the others were skeletal and wasted, these figures were whole, their flesh untouched by decay. But they did not move of their own accord. They were carried, lashed to great wooden poles, their arms pinned behind their backs, their heads slumped forward. Their eyes, wide and darting, flickered with something the others lacked. Awareness. They were alive. A low, shuddering exhale escaped my lips before I could stop it. one of the bound figures flinched. His head jerked up, his eyes locking onto mine with sudden manic desperation. His mouth, stitched shut with thick blackened thread, struggled against its bindings, muffled whimpers escaping through the cracks in the flesh. His body convulsed, writhing against the ropes, but the procession did not slow. The ones carrying him did not acknowledge his suffering. I took a step back. The ground beneath me shifted. Not rock, not dirt, but something living. A wet, thickened pulse throbbed under my heel, sending a shiver up my spine. And in the silence that followed, I heard something else. A sound too deep to be wind, too distant to be breath. A hum. Not mechanical, not organic. Something vast, resonant, vibrating through the very bones of this place. I turned my gaze to the sky, and I froze. The mist had thinned, revealing something beyond the broken spires of the land ahead. A sky that was not a sky. It moved, not like clouds, not like smoke, but as if it were watching. A shape churned in the distance, too large to fully comprehend. Not solid, not liquid, a shifting mass of something ancient, something unseen yet felt, stretching across the horizon like a slow-moving tide. And it was watching the procession. Not me. At least, not yet. But the thought of that thing turning its attention toward me filled my chest with a terror so absolute it threatened to unmake me. The bound figure in the procession let out a final desperate, muffled scream, and the sky shuddered. The sound rippled through the valley, a vibration deep enough to rattle my ribs, and the procession stopped. Every figure, every skeletal wretch, every veiled watcher, all frozen in place. The bound figures trembled, their stitched mouths opening and closing in silent pleas. And then, one by one, they were lifted. Not by hands, not by ropes, by something unseen. Their bodies rose, hoisted into the air as if plucked from the earth by an invisible force. Their backs arched, their limbs convulsing as they were pulled higher, higher toward the shifting mass above. I did not breathe. I did not move. And then one of them was ripped apart. No warning, no sound. One moment he was whole, the next he was a blur of motion, torn limb from limb in an instant. A fine red mist rained down over the procession, vanishing before it could touch the ground. The other bound figure spasmed, their muffled screams growing frantic, but they too were lifted, higher and higher, until silence. The sky swallowed them, and then the procession moved on, as if nothing had happened. I just stood there, my breath caught in my throat, the weight of something enormous pressing against my very soul. I had seen suffering before. I had seen torment, but this was something else. Something older. I did not know how long I remained frozen before I forced my feet to move. There was nowhere to go but forward. Deeper. Always deeper. The landscape grew stranger, more distorted, as though I was passing beyond the edges of what my mind could comprehend. The terrain beneath my feet had lost all familiarity. Gone were the jagged blackened stones, the towering remnants of a shattered world. In their place stretched something else, something living. The ground throbbed, not like a pulse but a slow rhythmic movement, as though I were treading upon the hide of some immense slumbering beast. It wasn't flesh, not entirely. The surface was cracked, revealing deep crevices that gaped like wounds, seeping a thick black ichor that did not drip but instead coiled and retracted as if aware of its own existence. A stench filled the air, rotten, sour, the reek of something long dead, yet refusing to decay. The mist that had clung to the air before had grown darker, thicker, its edges shifting with a sluggish crawling motion. Shapes moved within it. I kept my eyes forward. I did not want to know if they were watching me. The deeper I ventured, the more the world around me changed. The silence of before was gone, replaced by something far worse. A sound, low at first, distant like a storm rolling across an unseen sea. But as I walked, it grew louder, more distinct. It was not thunder. It was a chorus, not of voices but of something else. Groaning, stretching, the grinding of bone against bone, the creak of sinew pulled too tightly, the wet slithering of something vast and unseen. And beneath it all, the whispers. Not words, but something that mimicked them, something that scraped at the edges of my mind without ever forming meaning. I didn't listen. I could not afford to. The terrain sloped downward, and the air grew hotter. The wounds in the ground gaped wider, revealing deeper layers beneath. Tunnels of sinew and stone that coiled into darkness. The world breathed around me, exhaling waves of thick, humid air that carried the scent of things long forgotten. And then I saw them. The pillars. They stretched from the ground like ribs, curving toward the sky. Too uniform, too precise to be natural. They were vast, their surfaces marked with deep gaping fissures, and inside those fissures, things moved. Limbs, twisting, writhing arms that reached outward, grasping at nothing. Their skin was wrong, stretched thin over bones that should not exist, fingers ending in jagged splinters, joints bending in directions that should not be possible. They did not reach for me. Not yet. I passed between them, my breath shallow, my body tense. The pillars lined the path ahead like the remnants of some ancient carcass, guiding me deeper into whatever lay below. And then I saw the pit. It was not a crater, not a canyon, but something else entirely. A wound in the earth that did not end. An abyss without a bottom. The walls sloped inward, layered with what looked like rings of scar tissue, each level stacked upon the last in an endless spiral. And on those levels, I froze. They were filled with people, or what had once been people. They were pressed into the walls like fossils, their bodies half sunken into the layers of hardened flesh and stone, their faces twisted in expressions of silent agony. Their eyes were open, but they did not see. Their mouths gaped, but they did not scream. They only breathed. A slow, rattling sound, in unison, rising and falling like the exhalations of something vast. I could not move. I could not look away. And then the breathing changed. It faltered, staggered as though something had interrupted it. I stepped back. A mistake. The air shifted, and then, slowly, the nearest face turned toward me. It was not sudden. It did not jerk or snap. It simply turned, as though roused from a deep slumber. And then another, and another. All at once, their vacant eyes focused on me. The breathing stopped. The silence that followed was deeper than anything I had ever known. And then something moved in the pit. Something vast. Something that had been waiting. The walls of the chasm convulsed, the layers of embedded bodies shuddering as if stirred by some unseen force. The darkness within the depths shifted, something rising from the blackness far below. I did not move. I couldn't. And then, at last, I saw it. A shape, vast beyond reason. A presence that had been here long before I arrived. It had no eyes, no mouth, no face to call its own. But it saw me, and it remembered me. The pit trembled. The air grew thick. A sound, deep, wet, hungry, echoed from below. Not from a throat, but from the earth itself. And then a whisper. Not from the pit, not from the thing below, but from behind me.
You were never meant to come this far.
I turned slowly, and I was not alone.